conversation. Lessons on leadership, legacy, and fashion's transformative power. Dr Precious Moloi Motsepe founded African Fashion International in 2007. Under her leadership, AFI promotes African designers globally and uses fashion as a pathway for economic empowerment and job creation. She's in conversation with award-winning financial journalist Fifi Peters.
What this video didn't show that we're going to talk about right now is all the other hats that she also wears. Because some of you might also be aware that she has the hat of Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, UCT. You may be aware that she also wears the hat of a co-founder, of course, of the Motsepe Foundation, which has been championing major social causes in the country regarding women, regarding the youth, regarding girls for well over 20 years. And as we have seen, though, that she has something in common with many of us in this room, and particularly the founders in this room, because, ma'am, at your core, you are an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
who risked and ditched a stable career in medicine, and I'm glad that you didn't drop the doctor by your name, by the way, it suits you very well, but to take a bet on an industry at that time that perhaps the world didn't quite understand, and the world didn't understand Africa's place in it, through the establishment of Africa Fashion International that we have just seen right now. Take us back to that moment when you were like, I see medicine, I studied for this, probably endless sleepless nights getting this doctorate, but this is not where my heart is, and I want to follow my heart. Take us back there, ma'am.
Fifi, you have touched on my early career in medicine. I entered medicine with one goal, and that was to change how I saw our people. I grew up in Soweto, here in Johannesburg, and I wanted to change how our people enjoyed well-being, health, education around how to look after themselves. When I got into the industry, the medical faculty, I also noticed how women were not really benefiting from the system, the medical and health system that was meant to benefit them. For instance, whenever in medicine we talk about drugs, it's always measured against a 70-kilogram man. It doesn't take into consideration the hormonal makeup of women, their age, and how the drugs will interact with them. And often I would see patients who came to the hospital, either they did not know how to, for instance, examine their own breast to prevent breast cancer, or they were in menopause and were struggling and could not understand what was going on with their bodies. So I sought out to answer that problem. I realized there was a system flaw, and I went and studied women's health here in South Africa and in the United States, and I came back and opened the first women's clinic here in Johannesburg.
Oh, wow.
So that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, wow. No clap for her, it's fine.
Thank you. The women's clinic answered and spoke to the gap that was in the industry and the lack of a system which I had picked up.
Sure.
I did the same in the fashion industry. Traveling throughout the world, I would see amazing designs in Europe and in the States, and I knew that back home we have ample talent. We are not short of talent. What was missing, again, it was systems. Systems that are created to ensure that that talent is not just seen as culture, as inspiration, but it is seen as enterprise. It is seen as businesses. It is seen as an economy that creates jobs. The fashion industry globally is about a 2.4 trillion industry, employing about 50 million people. Here on the continent, it is projected by 2030 to grow to about 50 billion US if we ensure that we create the systems that will support the creative economy and and designers. We are not short of talent.
Sure. And you know, as I said, you wear many hats. And one of the hats that I didn't mention in the introduction is that you also wear the hat of philanthropy. But philanthropy in a different way, in the sense that philanthropy to you is it's not charity. It is a system and a strategy for economic enhancements and economic growth. And we'll talk about that in just a while.
Sure.
But the message has also been of economic uncertainty for most of today. And I want to dial back just for a brief moment to when you did establish AFI. From my understanding, it's 2007.
Correct.
Fast forward a year, global financial meltdown, poof. Fast forward all the other years after that, it's been crises after crises after crises. As an entrepreneur, what was your one tool of staying resilient and staying in the game, notwithstanding the economic difficulty?
That's an important question, Fifi, because if you look at the business, the small business landscape, women occupy the majority of the small businesses, very entrepreneurial, but they do not get the value of the work that they put in.
Sure.
So what needs to happen? It's about long-term thinking. I was clear in my mind that the economic meltdown, as you mentioned, come COVID, the vision of building this enterprise, this platform that will ensure that the African fashion industry not only thrives, but it is sustainable, it has systems. We own, as Africans, we own value chains. That's very important. We own our intellectual property, very, very important. And we keep the value here where it belongs. So it's not just about extraction and inspiration which goes out and the value is lost. So my thinking was, how do we design this system such that the value stays here at home on the continent where it belongs? And AFI is really that one piece, if you like, that concept of how we have managed to go from a promotions platform showcasing African designers to manufacturing, production, logistics, owning value chains, and the distribution platforms through the stores, through the e-commerce platform. So my vision has always been, don't dilute this platform, keep going. It's not easy, it's never easy. And importantly, given the competition we have from cheap imports, we need to create value through heritage, through our cultural know-how, through quality, through innovation, through our creativity, which we have an abundance of. So AFI has always been, the vision been around, create the platform where the world can come in and actually buy from us, and we keep the value here.
Sure. As you have said, ownership is power. And, you know, so you're talking about systems building. And nowadays, it's probably a lot easier to build systems. I mean, you ask whichever one of your language model is your friend, AI can probably create this thing and show you how to create it within seconds. I imagine that wasn't the case back in your days when you were building systems. No offense, ma'am. I mean, you look fabulous. But talk to us then, a systems builder of AFI, a systems builder, which you're trying to do right now and you are doing in academia, a systems builder with philanthropy, a systems builder also at the Motsepe Foundation in terms of the work that you're doing with education, young women, and also the youth. Challenges along the way, what were they, and how did you overcome?
Let me just touch on this because you mentioned philanthropy as a strategy, and I'll come back to your question around challenges. When my husband and I started the Motsepe Foundation, which is now 30 years old, we decided that we needed to create something that will address issues for women. What we saw was that when we open applications for bursaries, for instance, we provide bursaries to all 27 universities. We work on the continent with social entrepreneurship. We work globally with other partners around entrepreneurship. And over, we noticed that women were not applying for bursaries as much as men were. So we decided to actively curate and find these young women and girls from high schools and to bring them in. And the story I wanted to tell you is of one young woman who had teenage pregnancy, suffered teenage pregnancy, decided to go back to school, finished her matric, and we gave her a bursary. She studied medicine, qualified as a medical doctor. She comes from a rural village, in one of our rural communities, poor family. Her mother had been ill. When she finished her medical studies, she opened her own medical practice. That's entrepreneurship.
Sure.
She took her mother out of that poor environment, bought her a house. She took a young kid into a private school. She ensured that her family was stable. And she didn't stop there. She sits on a board of a local hospital. She sits at the table and she's changing the systems at the hospital. So from... And that is just one example. So we have many of these. And the point here is, if you have one, you are not going to change the system. You need scale. And that is the story of AFI as well. We need scale. To come back to your question around challenges. Challenges were many. If you think about AFI, for instance, when I started, we decided to take 4 young designers to Paris to expose them to global fashion industries. And I was discouraged. I was really, really reprimanded for putting out young people who I was going to destroy, And today, those 4 young people lead the industry. We took them, I think just after we started, maybe 2008, 2009, and we did Paris Fashion Week.
Sure.
Today you have David Tlale, who's a household name.
Sure.
You have Tula Cindy, who's a household name. You have Rich Mnisi, who's a household name. You have Tebe Magugu, who's a household name. So small little steps like that, and don't ever feel discouraged when people tell you it cannot be done.
Sure.
It's often the person who doesn't know that it cannot be done who goes ahead and does it. Because everybody else is scared. It's not how it's done. So we went through that and challenged. It was scary, and we succeeded. Other challenges that I've experienced have been around, again in the industry, infrastructure. We have serious problems with our manufacturing. We know the issues that we've had with water, lights, etc. We have problems with financing, and I'm sure every woman sitting in here who's an entrepreneur will tell you how difficult it is to raise funds through the funding institutions. For every $1 that a female entrepreneur is able to raise, a male entrepreneur can raise $25. Now, it's a system problem. There's nothing unfair about it. It's not a moral issue or anything like that. It's the system. So what do we need to do? Focus on changing systems. I often say to my colleagues who sit in high places, I say to them, it's good that you're invited to these tables. You sit around the tables. But don't be happy that you're sitting around the table. Go and change the system and own it. If need be, don't just sit around the table. Change the design of the table. I think that's very important for women to understand?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you clap. We can change the design of the table. Please, let's. And you've mentioned so many beautiful nuggets, and I like the example of the 4 young people that you bet on back then. And it applies right now because there's a lot of young people who say that we are just not given an inside the room. We're not believed in, but you've shown that it can be possible, and in fact, it can be rewarding. We are out of time, as this is a fireside, ma'am. But parting shot, particularly as a global citizen, you see the world, you see what's out there, you see the continent, you see what we have here. A lot of the women, businesses in this room, I know, are thinking about their businesses at scale and are thinking about being local citizens as well. Just parting shot in terms of what you'd say to them about unlocking that opportunity.
I think it's important, again, to think in systems. Leadership is not about doing it alone. Leadership is about getting into the room, looking around who's there, and seeing how you can influence the outcome. Leadership is about changing systems. Leadership is about taking others when you go. The African proverb applies here that says, if you want to go fast, you walk alone. But if you want to go far, you walk with others. And that's what we do at the foundation, at AFI, and with all the other places that I'm involved with. It's about walking with others. Africa is ripe for us to rise and begin to dictate our terms to the world. And we should be doing it as women, African women in leadership positions.
Dr. P? Yeah. I think going forward, I'm going to call you the systems builder. But ma'am, thank you so much for your time and sharing your pearls of wisdom with us. I know that many of us are feeling a little bit wiser right now and more encouraged to continue advancing in our individual careers and businesses. Can I ask for one last warm applause for Dr. P?
Thank you.